Welcome on into the Cougar Tracks Podcast, powered by KSLSports.com. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. Happy as always to have you on board of the podcast, wherever and however you're watching or listening to the show. That's right. You can check out the podcast and watch on YouTube. It's also available on audio form, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, X, Mitch_Harper, and also follow KSL Sports and download the KSL Sports app. You can get push notifications, get my bylines, my stories, and updates on BYU sports and this podcast on the KSL Sports app. So a loaded show for you today. Heavy focus on BYU football recruiting as the Cougars, well, they've got a big recruiting weekend coming up, one of the biggest that I can recall in recent memory. I'll share some of my thoughts on that, but Ryder Lyons, 5-star quarterback, is getting set for his visit to Provo. What's the chances BYU lands him? And I'll share my thoughts on Ryder and how he fits as a prospect and what BYU needs to do to potentially get him and if they need to go all in or not. So I'll share my thoughts on Ryder Lyons and also the rest of this official visit class. Some of the key notable guys is it's a loaded weekend of official visitors for BYU football, gearing up for a big recruiting set of visits for the class of 2026. You'll also hear from some of those 2026 prospects. PJ Takitaki, an edge rusher from Lehi High School. I caught up with him recently, and you'll hear that conversation that I had with him. And then also Adam Bywater, BYU target, who's going to be visiting this weekend from Olympus High School, a linebacker. You hear my conversation with him that I had a while back here on the podcast. And you'll also hear what goes into official visits. BYU Director of Player Personnel, Justin Anderson, I caught up with him. What's the strategy behind official visits? What are they looking to show these prospects? You'll hear that conversation as well. So it's a loaded show on deck here on Cougar Tracks. And again, appreciate all of you for being on board with me today. But we got to start things off with Ryder Lyons, as he's the big dog, man. He is a 5-star prospect, all-world prospect. And 6'2.5", 220 pounds. 5-star blue chip prospect. BYU's been recruiting this guy for years. Since 2021, they offered him, but the recruitment, you could probably say, goes back to when they were recruiting Walker Lyons, his older brother, who's currently at USC. The official visit's coming up this weekend. And I think a lot of people are just kind of jumping the gun and saying he's going to commit to BYU because he hasn't made any sort of decision yet. He told Rivals.com that it's decision time, and by the end of the month, there should be a decision. He took an official visit to Oregon last week, which, by the way, the official visit photos at Oregon are pretty awesome. I know people slam the official visit photo shoots, but I thought that biohazard stuff was pretty cool. I thought it looked legit. So BYU photo, they got to step up their game this weekend for Ryder Lyons. But I think a lot of people have looked at Ryder's recruitment and just assumed he's going to BYU because his sister, who has incredible aura, the Lyons family has tons of aura. His sister put out a video that said, "Where is your brother committing to your football?" Excuse me, let me rewind that. "Where is your brother committing to play football?" She then had the sound says, "I know something you don't know." People ran with that. Someone aggregated that video. Brett Hammer from ESPN 960. And Ryder Lyons responded to that and said, "Man, I don't even know where I'm going yet." So it's an all attention focused on Ryder Lyons, and for good reason. This guy is big time. You look at the numbers. I don't necessarily always buy into stats in high school. I don't really. But Ryder Lyons is playing at a high level of high school football in California, one of the premier programs at Folsom High School. He's got elite talent around him, but he accounts for 60 touchdowns, 46 through the air, 14 on the ground. This guy can do it all. His footwork is quick. He's fluid. He's got an excellent arm. He fits perfectly with what BYU wants out of their quarterbacks. He's like Zach Wilson, and he can make all the throws at all three levels. I think, when you talk about quarterbacks that BYU wants that can stretch the field, this is Ryder Lyons. And to me, this is a massive opportunity for BYU football to really reshape the narrative about who they are as a program on the recruiting trail. Because everything BYU football has done in the Kalani Sitake era has been punching above their weight based on the recruiting classes. I talked about it earlier this week that you're seeing the recruiting bump with some of the personnel compared to what they've had in the past. I mean, I'm seeing it. The depth is much improved at BYU than where it was when Kalani took over. But with all that said, in these 10 years that Kalani has been running the program, he's not getting 5 stars. And if you can get a Ryder Lyons who could go to anywhere in the country, I mean, there's BYU, there's Oregon, there's USC, Ohio State jumped into the mix, Ole Miss, Michigan's flirted with Ryder Lyons. I mean, he could go anywhere he wants. And if you could get that guy, yeah, people on the surface would say, oh, he's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They would probably then say he wants to take his Mormon trip, which I hate when people say that. Just say he's serving a church, a mission for the LDS church. I hate when people say mission trip. It's not a trip. It's not a vacation. Come on, people, show some respect on that. But they'll look at that and just say, that's why he's going there. If that was the case, why isn't BYU getting all the LDS top talent over the years? That hasn't always been a slam dunk. So getting Ryder Lyons would be massive for BYU, and Brandon Huffman, one of the best in the business when it comes to recruiting, 24/7 Sports. He was on with DJ and PK on the KSL Sports Zone, and he shared his thoughts on Ryder Lyons and BYU's chances of getting.
I mean, I've said for 2 years that I think he's the best quarterback in the country. I know he's a top 5 quarterback nationally. He's the number 1 player in California. For my money, I will take him as the best quarterback in the country, and this is big. It was essentially down to BYU, USC, and Oregon. His brother is at USC, and then he was supposed to take a visit there 2 weeks ago, canceled it, and there's talk it may happen in the fall because he's not enrolling until 2027. There's a little bit of flexibility, but I have maintained for a while this was a BYU-Oregon battle, and I have said more than anybody in the media, do not sleep and do not discount BYU's efforts with him. And now they get their shot. They get the last visit, and they got all the big guns visiting this weekend as well. So, this could end up being the most significant recruit Kalani Sitake has ever gotten in his 10 years at BYU. So all eyes are on Provo, not just with BYU fans, but I would say college football fans in general are tracking this one.
If he chooses BYU, why do you think he would choose them?
I think there's a couple reasons in play. He really likes Aaron Roderick. He really likes the direction that BYU is going. I think he is seeing that, after the 2024 season, when they got their feet under themselves and the way that they competed, not just in the Big 12, but, as a nationally ranked team throughout the year, that this is an offense. Kalani's a defensive guy, and that's always a concern when you're a quarterback. If I go play for a defensive guy, is his focus going to be on winning the game with defense, or is he going to open up the offense? And I think this last year with Jake Retzlaff, a quarterback, they showed a penchant to, be exciting on offense. And I think that really answered a lot of questions. And obviously, having a guy like Zach Wilson go number 2 in the draft a few years ago, having a number of quarterbacks in recent years get drafted and get the opportunity in the NFL, that helps. But it's also the direction the program is trending up on a national scale. And I also think that, given the fact that he is planning to serve a mission for a year, there's complete flexibility and openness from BYU. Oregon and USC are saying the same thing, but obviously BYU has a track record of being open to that and allowing for that and encouraging that. And so I think a lot of factors play into BYU being a very legitimate threat to land him.
Good stuff from Brandon Huffman. One thing I will say I disagree with slightly on that with Huff. Again, he's one of the best in the business. I think he is the standard when it comes to national recruiting. He puts a ton of respect on a place like BYU where very few on the national recruiting scene do, because he's right. He's really the only one that's given BYU any sort of level of magnitude when it comes to the recruitment of Ryder Lyons at all. So, but I will say Kalani, yes, he was a defensive coordinator at Utah and Oregon State, but he played the offensive side of the ball as a player. And we've seen enough in Kalani's tenure. He wants to stretch the field. He's not going to be one of those defensive-minded guys that becomes meddling with the offensive staff. Kalani wants to let it rip, man. Like that's putting it lightly, but he wants an entertaining brand of football on the offensive side. Kalani knows that is tied to BYU football, to have a high-level, energetic, exciting brand of football on the offensive side. I honestly think it's frustrated him in some of these seasons, even last year in stretches where the offense wasn't playing to its full capabilities. So that would be my only disagreement there with Huff, but I thought it was great commentary because BYU is a real player for Ryder Lyons, and it feels like it's BYU and Oregon, but USC, you always got to factor in waiting in the wings. But to me, on this recruitment, BYU's got to do whatever it takes. They've got to do whatever it takes to get this thing done. And I say that because the quarterback position, again, rewrites narratives about your program. It also creates job security. You heard the commentary right there from Huffman. Lyons likes Aaron Roderick. That's been evident the whole entire time of this recruitment. And Lyons has taken, 2-game visits last year. He was in for spring ball back in March. He likes this staff. BYU, if it comes down to the financials, and look, they've always said they're not going to be in a bidding war and it's not going to be solely about money. But to me, you go do whatever it takes to get it done, to get that guy on board. Because if you get him, then you talk about other recruits. It feels like it could be a domino effect. Remember, 15 years ago, and I probably shouldn't bring this up because then the Cougar fans will think, oh, we don't want it to be like that. But when Jake Heaps committed to BYU in 2010, the 2010 cycle, it was the summer of 2009. That was a domino effect. Ross Oppo joined. Zach Stout joined. Jake Heaps was recruiting that class. And look, I know Jake didn't end up being the all-world prospect that everyone thought he would be. The guy still got a chance in the NFL. He's still working in the game of football and is highly respected by NFL QBs. Jake Heaps has got an arm talent. He's got ability. You can never question that. I've always said to people that these 5-star recruits, when they're labeled bust, it's not because they lack talent. It's some of maybe the system, maybe the off-the-field distractions. There's all sorts of things that go into guys, quote-unquote, being bust. It's never, wow, they have no talent and they're not good. The talent's off the charts with Ryder Lyons. And Jake Heaps was dang good too. It didn't work at all at BYU. But I do believe that, but to draw a parallel to that cycle, if you get Ryder Lyons, you probably get a bunch of guys to follow suit. And BYU's got a big official visit weekend coming up. Guys like Jax Tanner, offensive lineman from Idaho, son of Mike Tanner, former BYU linebacker. He's going to be visiting. He just was on an official visit to Tennessee. Before that, he was at Oregon. Guys like Prince Williams, Bishop Gorman, edge rusher. Adam Bywater from Olympus High School. Graham Livingston, a wide receiver. Lopeti Moala from Orem High School. And then you also got a cornerback in Syracuse commit, Jackson Gates. And look, those are defensive side of the ball, but if a 5-star prospect commits to you, why wouldn't you consider it? If you're a 3-star defensive guy, build something special. Follow Lyons' lead. He's got that sort of aura. Again, I go back to the aura. My son, who follows YouTube videos like all kids do, and I love that my kids are kind of getting into recruiting through YouTube, the courtside films in basketball, OT7. I watched the overtime Cold Hearts games with Ryder Lyons. This dude's got immaculate aura, man. And if you get him, I get that sense that you could get a lot of people to follow suit and follow that guy. But it's going to be a huge, huge official visit weekend for BYU. If you can get, some of the names that I mentioned that are uncommitted, you could be knocking on the door of a top 20 class potentially. But Ryder Lyons is the linchpin to that. Then you got BYU commits Brock Harris, PJ Takitaki, Legend Glasgow. They're going to be visiting as well. So it's a huge, huge weekend for BYU football. And one of those guys that's visiting, that's a BYU commit already on the board, is PJ Takitaki. This was my conversation a few weeks back at the Under Armour Next Camp here in Salt Lake City with BYU's future edge rusher, PJ Takitaki.
Okay, here at the Under Armour event here at West High with BYU commit PJ Takitaki. How do you feel like it went today?
Everything was smooth. Drills are good, coaches were good. A lot of fundamental stuff, a lot of good stuff, all made sense. So it's a good day.
So take us through why BYU, is that still the place for you? You still committed to BYU?
Yeah, BYU's a place. I feel like it's like something different there. It's just like you can feel it. The culture, the brotherhood, the family they got there, and what Kalani's doing it all just makes sense to me. But yeah, I say it just feels like home.
With what impressed you the most about that, with the home aspect, but also the relationships you form with the staff?
I like it because I come in there, everyone's smiling, everyone's happy. They all tell me I look like my uncle, so it's always like I always joke around and tell them I look better than him. But it just feels like a family. I feel like I can, like they got my back. If anything, it just feels like I'm their family. Like that, they'll take care of me if anything happens. So I feel safe.
And for those that maybe aren't familiar, your uncle Sione Takitaki, right?
Yes, sir.
And what's his been advice throughout this process? Was he saying you got to go to BYU?
He always leans. He's like, man, hey, BYU, that's like where I grew up. But like, he always pushes me. He's like, you can be better. Like he wants to do better than him. You got to always like train a lot with him, and he always pushes me to be greater than him and be the best the family's ever seen. So,
what do you feel like your strengths are as a player?
I feel like as what I bring to BYU as a player is versatility. I like that a lot because not only can I rush the edge and get that quarterback, but I can also drop and cover ground if needed.
Last thing for you, PJ, what's the summer plans like before you get ready for your senior season with a talented Lehi squad?
Man, train some more. That's all it is. You gotta separate yourself from the pack. Eagles can't fly with pigeons, so you just gotta get better. You gotta separate yourself. Eagles don't look good with pigeons. They don't fly with pigeons because if they want to be great, you gotta fly with the great. So you gotta be great.
You want to fly high like an eagle, then?
High like an eagle, yes sir.
All right, PJ. Okay, hear it.
There you go. Fly high like an eagle. Let him fly. Fly like an eagle. Another official visitor who's uncommitted, but he's got a familiar name, Adam Bywater out of Olympus High School. And I caught up with Adam last month at the Under Armour Next Camp. And keep in mind, with recruiting, things can change. So some of the info that he might have said back then at the Under Armour Next Camp might not be his thought process right now, but it's a way to kind of get to know Adam as he heads into the official visit. But he's got a strong list of contenders. I don't look at this as just a slam dunk for BYU to get him, just because his name and his connections to the BYU football program. As you'll hear, there's some strong suitors pursuing him. This is Adam Bywater, my conversation I had with him last month at the Under Armour Next Camp. With KSL here at the Under Armour Next Camp. For people that maybe aren't familiar with this, that are sports fans out here, what's this camp about, and what did you think of the competition out here?
Oh, it was all the best players in the state and surrounding states, so like Colorado, Arizona, Idaho, and it was high competition, high elite players. So it was great to show my my ability against the best players in the West. So, and I was really happy how I played.
How much do you enjoy this competition?
Oh, love it. I wouldn't want to play anything less. Top of the game is where I want to play, so I want to play against the best competition.
And I'm sure the competition's fierce for you right now for the recruiting scene. How has that process been going, and who are some of the schools that are really catching your attention right now?
Absolutely. It's been going great. This past 6 months has been, a dream come true. But mostly BYU, Utah, Arizona State, Boise State are, high on my list right now. But, we're open-minded to anyone else coming in. But those are like the top 4 most likely. But and I got my OVs coming up.
And I got to ask, since your older brother, Ben Bywater, was a BYU standout, and he's like a world traveler now. He's traveling all over the world. Every time I look, it's like he's got this new exotic places. Has Ben kind of lent his advice to, because both linebackers, what's his advice that he shared with you through this process?
Absolutely. He just said he's been telling me, hey, go where the coaches want you. Don't go where go where you want to, but go where the coaches want you. So that's been really, really informational for me. Asking great questions, asking where they see myself, but also, hey, you want to go where you can live who you are. Leave your last name. So those are some of the 2 big things he's been telling me, but other things as well. And yeah, he's just traveling, him and his wife. Hey, shout out Ben. Hey, come home safe.
Ben was a rugby guy.
Oh, yeah.
You a rugby guy too?
I did. I played last year, but this year I was just doing training and track, trying to get stronger, more athletic, so all that. But I'll play rugby next year.
How do you feel like that helps with translate to football and maybe the skill set? Where's the crossover?
Oh, absolutely. It teaches you physicality because you don't have pads on. So, but mostly it teaches you how to tackle because you don't want to hurt your head, right? So I feel that's been really helpful for me in games because I know I can come down hard, hit hard, but I can protect myself for longevity.
What's the summer looking like for you, Adam?
Yeah. So I got my first OV end of this month with Utah, and then I have Boise on June 7th, and then I have BYU June 19th, and then I think I'll probably commit late July, maybe early August.
And you brought up what Ben's advice was about going to places that coaches want you. Yeah. What are you looking for on these official visits? Is it about that want from the coaches, or what else are some other aspects that you're hoping to see?
Absolutely. I'm looking for, great scheme. I'm a big scheme because I feel like if I like the scheme, I can, play well. But I'm also looking for good environment, a great brotherhood. I'm all about culture, so I'm looking for culture with the coaches and with the players because you don't want to go somewhere where the players don't want to play with you, right? But I'm also looking for academics because, I want to be set for life. If, NFL will work out, but if it doesn't, then, I can, go do good in life.
There you go. That's Adam Bywater. Good stuff there. I enjoyed catching up with him and checking in on his recruitment. He's a good guy, and he's going to be someone that, Utah, they had an official visit. BYU coming up, as you heard. Stiff competition for BYU to land Adam Bywater. We'll see if they can actually get it across the finish line and land a commitment from him. BYU's had success with their official visits last week. BYU, has picked up, of course, some commitments from last week's group of official visitors. And I think that's always something that is a strength of BYU's, is that if you can get guys on campus, get to the official visit, they have a pretty good track record of closing and finishing and getting across that finish line. They got Matthew Mason since the last time we had the podcast earlier this week. But, I'm very intrigued to see how effective this official visit weekend becomes and how productive it is for this BYU football class. And one of the guys that looks to, get a lot of commits part of this 2026 class is BYU football director of player personnel, Justin Anderson. I caught up with Justin Anderson a few weeks back to preview the official visit season and discuss recruiting with Anderson. And here's my conversation with BYU football's director of player personnel here on Cougar Tracks. His fourth season with the BYU football program. He's been part of the recruiting staff since 2022. He's the main guy. BYU football director of player personnel, Justin Anderson. He joins us here on KSL. And Justin, this month of June, for people that maybe aren't as familiar with recruiting, they maybe don't realize that the month of June is the month it feels like in the recruiting calendar.
Yeah, times have changed. It really has become the primary focus for official visits and recruiting. I mean, you have camps and official visits, all kinds of stuff going on. So, yeah, I would say everything has moved up in the last few years. You're focusing on trying to get guys committed up, and it's fun, but, boy, it's a whirlwind, I'll tell you that.
What have been the key causes, in your opinion, that have led June to being such a critical month in shaping recruiting classes?
Yeah, I think with the two signing periods now, obviously you have the December signing period and February. I mean, the way I see it now, honestly, is most schools the December period has become the signing period. And because of that, everything has moved up, right? You're trying to get guys locked in to get them here for mid-year. You don't want to push it past that if you don't have to. Worrying about other schools recruiting guys. I mean, it just pushes everything up. So this month of June has become such a critical time to get visits and things in. I mean, you can do them during the season, but I think most programs like to do it in the summer. Season visits, you got games and all kinds of trying to find time to get a recruit in and out. It just seems to make the most sense.
Talking with BYU football director of player personnel, Justin Anderson, here on KSL News Radio. And some of your job responsibilities include, acquiring top available talent and ensuring each position group's filled, managing the roster. What other aspects go into being the director of player personnel that maybe fans aren't aware of in your day-to-day operation?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, we really focus on, nowadays you have kind of two parts to the recruiting process. There's the actual recruitment part, and then there's the evaluation part that kind of run hand in hand. And so making sure your roster is up and running, making sure you're recruiting the right guys, make sure you're evaluating the right guys, make sure you're finding the right guys. There's a finding process, and it kind of never stops. People ask me sometimes, when do you get a break? And the answer is really, you don't. Because you're always looking for the next class. As soon as 26 classes locked in, we're already looking at 27 and 28 groups. Who do we need to be recruiting about? Trying to find the top of talent that would fit BYU and can help us win a national championship and be strong competitors every year in our conference.
I've always been curious too, Justin, when it comes to identifying players, and obviously when it comes to recruiting, you can't get into names with us here right now, but how much collaboration is there between you and position coaches, coordinators, and ultimately head coach Kalani Sitake when it comes to, hey, this guy could be a really good fit for this program at BYU? How much collaboration do you have on that when identifying guys for future classes?
Yeah, I think a lot. Obviously, the position coaches will give you parameters. Here's things I'm looking for, whether it's height, weight, speed, hand size, maybe if it's a quarterback or whatever, what kinds of things they want to see in film. And then we start looking for those kind of things. Maybe it's, obviously here we have academic part to it and religious part to it. So we're filtering through guys, trying to find guys that fit within these parameters, not only as a talent side of things, the way they look on film, different things like that, to their character, their grades. You're getting stuff from coaches and anyone that you can find information about the kid, searching Twitter or Instagram to find, are these the right kids for BYU? So the coaches really set the parameters. We then bring them a list of guys we feel like fit those parameters, and then they kind of start saying, okay, here's the guys that I think I really like within those things. And then if they don't, we start looking for other ones that we feel like might hit those parameters. But there's a ton of collaboration. It's their position room, so our goal is to find the guys that they really like, that they feel like can help their room be as competitive as possible.
In a world where recruiting might feel, for people on the outside, might feel, transactional in this era, are there still relationships being formed? Because I think back to, years gone by where, there'd be recruitments that go 3, 4 years, 5 even, and you just form those great relationships. Does that still exist in today's landscape when it comes to recruiting? Because I know Jay Hill's talked about how important high school recruiting is. Does that still exist?
I think it does. I mean, I think it becomes what you want it to become. I think BYU is a relationship based. Our head coach is a relationship guy. And so we really try and focus on that. I mean, I find it hard to believe the kid's just going to go somewhere only because of money. I think the relationship really does matter when you're maybe comparing other schools. It might be, man, I have a really good relationship with this coach or this team. I fit in great. Plus, now with the NIL part, that it's good enough for me NIL wise. Okay, this is the place for me. So I do think relationships matter. I think at BYU, they'll always matter even more. And so forming and finding those relationships as early as you can is great. Now, there's obviously rules when you can contact guys and not. So, when guys come to campus as young guys, making strong relationships and connections with them anytime they're on campus.
And when they do get on campus, and this month, as you noted, with the camps and official visits, maybe official visits being such a big piece to recruiting, when a recruit takes an official visit to BYU, what are you and the football program looking to show a prospect and his family when they come out to Provo on the visit?
Yeah, I actually just with a recruit today. For me, there's no sales piece here because I think a lot of these coaches, it's funny when you really start talking, from coordinator to your offensive coordinator, your cornerbacks coach, your linebackers coach, your DNs coach. I mean, you just go down the list of your head coach, running back coach, staff members that have played at BYU. It's different. And people that it has influenced their lives, it's become a special place for them. I think we're trying to have recruits feel what we feel, how BYU helped us along the way. And for me, it's refreshing because it's not a sales pitch. I don't have to sell anything. I've lived it, right? And so when you've lived it, you've been a part of it, you've been a part of the place. I really feel like there's a special feeling at BYU when you get here. We want those kids to feel that, the families to feel that. We hope it feels like home when they're here. And, there's obviously meetings and places you're trying to show them around campus. Moms, what does a mom want to see? Probably where they're going to live and, what kind of food they're going to eat. Those are things I think most schools are showing. And, our job is to do that as well. And then, make sure that they feel like, man, BYU is everything they said it is. And like I said, I feel like that's easy for us.
Are there any fun activities that take place on the official visits in the summertime? Because I remember back in the day, it used to be the snowmobiles when official visits were the key visit time in the winter. What's some of the summer activities these official visitors get to do on a visit to BYU?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to let all of our secrets out, but no, I'm just kidding. So, I think we try and get them on the water, get them around things out here. BYU in this area is an outdoors place. So in the summer, you want to show them the outdoors. There's a lot of beautiful places here in this area, so we want to get them out, show them some of that. We want them to be around our players. I think that's an important part of every program is the players on your team. I mean, they're the best examples of what your program is, right? So we're going to have activities where our players and team and whatnot are around. Our families are going to be around these kids and their families because, I think Kalani makes it that way. It's easy to have your family around when the head coach encourages it. So, we do. We spend a lot of time outdoors. We try and get around the water somehow. And I think the guys have a lot of fun. And I feel like these last couple summer visits, the adjustment used to be the snowmobiling. Now it's getting them on the water. And the snowmobiling part was obviously unique to us. But I think the guys still have a great time.
Here with Justin Anderson for a few more moments. And again, BYU football director of player personnel and former BYU wide receiver. And I'm curious, Justin, in what ways have you seen the biggest growth in BYU's recruiting efforts since you arrived back on campus in 2022?
Oh man, that's a great question. I don't know. I think we've always tried to do a good job. Obviously, I think what great programs do, we want to be great, is you're always looking at ways to improve. What can we do now? You want to stay ahead of the curve. You don't want to be the last one to do something. I think we evaluate well. I think we find guys well. I think when you can do those kind of things, that helps in the recruitment process. So I think, our staff has grown some since I've been here. I think that helps, in the recruitment staff. And so when you have more people, more eyes, more opportunities to find, I think that helps. I think our coaches do a great job in recruiting, which also helps. We have a great alumni network here that is supportive and helpful. So, I think the move to the Big 12 is a big one. And I'm going to be honest with you, right? I think that helped a lot. And so I think those would be the things that I think that have helped: the growth in recruiting staff, move to the Big 12, and then obviously I think NIL. I think we're competitive in what we need to do to help guys want to be at BYU.
And to follow up on that, does you can't get into specific names of the current recruiting class that you're pursuing for 2026, but for anyone that's following, there's a lot of momentum right now. And what do you feel are causing that momentum? All those factors that you just mentioned, and how much of a role is the on-field product too? Like, what do you feel is creating this momentum? Is it just solely winning football games, or is it something more?
God, once again, I think there's a variety of things. I don't think winning helps, right? I think we'd be lying if we sat here and said not. I think winning helps. I really believe our head coach is one of one, and so that helps, right? A great guy with a great personality who's a player's coach. I think that helps. And so, I think when good players decide they want to come here, right? When you have good players saying, you know what, I want to go to BYU, that helps. That creates momentum. So now other good players start saying, wait, that guy's going there. Well, maybe I should look at BYU a little bit more. Maybe, right? So I think there's a cause and effect of all those things. Like, they're in a great conference. Good players are going there. They're winning. Like, you start saying to yourself, guys go to the NFL, what don't they have? So if you have everything and it's the perfect fit, why not BYU?
Good stuff. Justin Anderson, BYU football director of player personnel. Thanks for carving out some time, Justin, with your busy schedule. Because, again, I know the camp season and official visits, it is locked and loaded. And then hopefully, July 4th, you get a little bit of a break, and that's fall camp. But like I said, never stops. But I appreciate the time, Justin.
No, thank you. And thank you, Cougar Nation and Mitch, for all you guys do, man.
There you go. That's Justin Anderson. Great stuff from him. Appreciate him carving out some time with me and talking some ball. This class could be pretty special for BYU. We'll see how it finishes out, because you got to remember, too, when it comes to recruiting, in-season recruiting for seniors, it's not as common anymore. Guys are off the board pretty much in spring and summer anymore, so a bulk of this recruiting class is going to be on the board for BYU already, and then come wintertime, it then pivots to transfer portal season. So key stretch here for BYU football, and we'll have you covered on KSLSports.com. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a 5-star rating and a review. Helps out the show a ton, and check out the show on YouTube. New video podcast. You can go check that out on KSL Sports YouTube. Talk to you next time here on the Cougar Tracks Podcast. It's powered by KSLSports.com.